A brief history of the Comanche tribe. If you go back through American history, you see that at one point, the Spanish stopped expanding north. At the same time, the French stopped expanding west from Louisiana. The reason for this was mainly the Comanches. They were the reason for a 40-year wait before the U.S. government could develop the state of Texas or other plain states. The Comanches were originally a part of the Shoshone tribe, speaking the same language and living in the Great Basin region of the western United States as hunters and gatherers. Sometime during the late 17th century, the Comanches acquired horses, and that acquisition drastically altered their culture. The life of the tribe was revolutionized as they rapidly evolved into a mounted, well-equipped, and powerful people. Their new mobility allowed them to leave their mountain home and their Shawnee neighbors and move on to the plains of eastern Colorado and western Kansas. After their arrival on the Great Plains, the Comanches began a southern migration. There they found a warmer climate, a lot of buffalo and Mustang horses, a perfect environment. During the move, they traded with the French, especially for guns and ammunition. They also traded with the Wichita tribe on the Red River. There was also pressure from better armed tribes on their north and east, such as the Blackfoot and the Crow. A vast area of the South Plains, including much of North, Central, and West Texas, soon became Comanche country, or Comancheria. Only after their arrival on the southern plains did the tribe come to be known as Comanches, a name derived from the Ute word meaning enemy, or literally anyone who wants to fight me all the time. Although the tribe came to be known historically as Comanches, they called themselves Nemina, or the people. The Comanche were organized into autonomous bands. Bands were made of family. When a man married, he left his family and joined his wife's family. The buffalo was a crucial animal for the Comanche. Other than providing food, it was also used for clothing and shelter. However, it was the horse that defined the Comanche way of life. It gave them mobility to follow the buffalo herds and the advantage of hunting and conducting warfare from horseback. Horses also became a measure of Comanche wealth and a valuable trade commodity, as they were known traders. In horsemanship, the Comanche had no equals. Children learned to ride at an early age, and both men and women developed exceptional riding skills. Democratic principle was strongly implanted in Comanche political organization. Each band had both civil or peace chiefs and war chiefs, but traditionally, the head civil chief was most influential. Leaders gained their position as band members chose them by common consent. In the early 18th century, with the Comanches moving into Texas, they came into conflict with tribes already living on the South Plains, particularly the Apaches. The Comanches were victorious in the conflict, forcing the Apaches to move south. In 1758, a force of some 2,000 Comanches and allied tribes attacked a Spanish mission built for the Apaches on the San Saba River. The mission was sacked and burned, and 8 of its inhabitants, including 2 priests, were killed. A year later, a Spanish expedition led by Colonel Diego Ortiz Barria was defeated by the Comanches and their allies in a day-long battle on the Red River near the site of the present Spanish fort. Since the Spanish weren't able to defeat the Comanches, they offered them peace treaties throughout the next decades. With the Apaches still being a threat, some of the treaties were honored and some were. In 1785, the Spanish authorities traveled to Comancheria and negotiated peace with offers and promises of gifts that lasted until the end of the century. At this time, it's believed the tribe's population was between 20,000 and 40,000 people. As Spanish power weakened in the early years of the 19th century, officials were unable to supply promised gifts and trade goods, and Comanche aggression once again became common. Comanches raided deep into Spanish territory, taking horses and goods that they would later sell to traders entering Texas from the United States. Those Americans furnished the Comanches with trade goods, including arms and ammunition, and provided a thriving market for Comanche horses. In 1821, Mexico won independence from Spain. But the change of government had little impact in Comancheria. Mexican officials began encouraging Shawnees, Cherokees, and other tribes to wage war on the Comanches. The Mexican colonization law of 1824 encouraged foreign immigration to Texas, and settlers from the United States poured into the province. The friendly relationship that had developed through mutually beneficial trade quickly began to fade when the newly arrived settlers began occupying land that Comanches considered their traditional hunting ground, and the two soon became enemies. When Texas won independence from Mexico in 1836, the Comanches and their allies were still in absolute control of the Texas plains. They frequently conducted raids on frontier settlements. In one of the raids, they took hostage a 9-year-old girl that would later integrate into the tribe. It would later turn out that this was the mother of Quanah Parker, the famous last Comanche chief. The first elected president of the Republic of Texas, Sam Houston, proposed a peace policy. The Texas Congress refused to agree to the one Comanche requirement for peace, a boundary line between Texas and Comancheria. So the policy was rejected. Mirabeau B. Lamar, who succeeded Houston as president, didn't believe in peace with the natives and favored waging war on the Comanches. This culminated in the Council House fight, a tragic incident that occurred in San Antonio in the spring of 1840, when Texas officials attempted to arrest a Comanche peace delegation. Fighting broke out, and 35 Comanches, including 12 chiefs, were killed. The remaining 30 Comanches, primarily women and children, were imprisoned by the Texans. 7 Texans were also killed in the melee, and 8 were wounded. As a response to this, a few months later, the Comanches launched a retaliatory raid. An estimated 500 warriors, led by Buffalo Hump, made a sweep through South Texas, devastating the towns of Victoria and Linville, killing 25 Texans, stealing and burning settlements. While they were returning north, they were intercepted at Plum Creek and engaged by Texan forces. The Texas Rangers managed to defeat the Comanches. They suffered 11 casualties, while the number of natives killed is not known, although Rangers reported recovering 12 bodies. In October, Texan forces destroyed a Comanche encampment near the site of present Colorado City. The Comanches moved beyond the Red River, so the Texans succeeded in removing the Comanches from the borders of Texas, but at a terrible cost to both sides. Despite Sam Houston becoming president again in 1841 and trying to reinstall his peace policy, peace was never achieved. Texas was annexed to the Union in 1845, and the United States government took over the administration of Texas Indian affairs. In an attempt to protect both settlers and Indians, 2 reservations were established in Texas in 1854. 350 Comanches, whose band had been weakened by warfare, epidemic diseases, and depletion of the buffalo herds, moved to the reservation. Other Comanche bands still freely roamed the plains. Raids increased as the Civil War left the frontier unprotected. But when the war ended, the federal government re-established frontier defenses and resumed its treaty-making with the Plains tribe. The treaties were designed to open the region to settlers by forcing the nomadic tribes onto reservations. The 1867 Treaty of Medicine Lodge Creek, the last treaty made with the Comanches, established a reservation for the Comanches, Kiowas, and Kiowa Apaches in southwestern Indian Territory between the Washita and Red River. The Comanches, who saw their way of life rapidly vanishing, would not subdue. So they turned to a young medicine man named White Eagle for leadership. In spring of 1874, he promised them victory over the whites. A war chief named Quanah Parker also had major influence for the resisting Comanches. Inspired by the visionary leader, warriors attacked buffalo hunters at adobe walls. In Hutchinson County, Comanches, Kiowas, and Cheyennes attacked the hunters who were using an abandoned fort in their quest to kill the buffalo for their hides. Although the hunters were greatly outnumbered, the natives were defeated because of the protection offered by the fort itself and the long-range buffalo rifles used by the hunters. This failure destroyed the natives' faith. It also brought revenge from the U.S. government, as the same year the Army began a relentless campaign that became known as the Red River War. An attack was launched for the purpose of driving all natives to the reservation. Forces under the command of Colonel Ronald S. Mackenzie surprised the Comanche camp in Palo Duro Canyon and destroyed their horse herd. Very few of them were killed in the engagements, but their supplies were destroyed, meaning they could not survive and were forced to enter the reservation. Conaparca's group held out on the Staked Plains for almost a year before they finally surrendered, being the last free Comanches to be placed in the reservation. Once estimated to tens of thousands, the Comanche populations in 1875 had been reduced to 1,600. They were transported to the Fort Sill Reservation, which they shared with Kiowas and Apaches. Life on the reservation was different, as the government attempted to transform the hunters and warriors into farmers and stockmen. The Comanche cultural values and beliefs were under constant attack, as they were encouraged to take up the white man's ways. The reservation period came to an end in 1901, when the reservation was broken up. According to the agreement, which was signed between the U.S. government and the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache tribes, each man, woman, and child would receive 160 acres of land, with additional land set aside for church, agency, and school use. In return, the natives gave up all their lands with the exception of 4 tracts, which contained over 500,000 acres, or 862 square miles, and agreed to accept $2 million for the relinquished land. Comanche leaders protested the allotment on multiple grounds, but the federal government upheld the agreement. Lands not allotted to the natives were thrown open to the public, and whites soon outnumbered natives on the former reservation. As the years passed, many Comanches began to disperse due to economic opportunity. Many left in search of jobs. Soon, World War II came, and many of them joined military service and found jobs in the defense industry. Comanches were among the several tribes that contributed to the war effort by using their language as code, one the Germans never broke. 17 Comanche code talkers worked on the task. In the 1960s, the Comanches, encouraged by a resurgence of native nationalism, began to work together to rebuild their society. They underwent important political changes as a result of that initiative, established their own tribal government, which operates near Lawton, Oklahoma. The Comanche Nation today has approximately 16,000 tribal members, with almost 8,000 living in southwest Oklahoma. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon.